The NBA, the National Basketball Association, and their commissioner, for whatever reason, they seem to appreciate and understand the Caitlyn Clark phenomenon better than the WNBA.
The moment that changed everything happened on a Thursday afternoon. Adam Silver, sitting in his Manhattan office overlooking the city that never sleeps, received news that made his blood run cold. Caitlyn Clark, the phenom who had single-handedly dragged women's basketball from the shadows into the spotlight, was pulling out of the WNBA All-Star Game.
I'm incredibly sad and disappointed to say I can't participate in the three-point contest or the All-Star Game.
Not because of drama, not because of politics. Because her body had been systematically destroyed by a league that treats its biggest asset like an expendable rookie. And Adam Silver had finally seen enough. For months, the NBA commissioner had watched in growing horror as the WNBA butchered the greatest gift any professional sports league had ever received. A once-in-a-generation talent who brought record viewership, unprecedented revenue, and global attention to women's basketball.
Nobody else in this WNBA, now or in the past, has ever carried a league as she does.
And what did they do with this miracle? They let referees turn her into a punching bag, while Commissioner Kathy Engelbert sat in her ivory tower, pretending everything was fine. But this all-star withdrawal? This was the final straw that broke the camel's back. Clark's withdrawal from All-Star Weekend wasn't just devastating for fans who had planned trips to Indianapolis specifically to see her play. It was a damning indictment of a league that has completely failed to protect its most valuable asset. The groin injury that sidelined her was the direct result of the physical punishment she's endured all season. Punishment that should have been stopped by competent officiating months ago.
The chronically lousy second-rate officiating has led to such a hard play uglification.
The pattern is undeniable and infuriating. Since entering the WNBA, Clark has missed significant time with a quad injury, then a different quad injury, then a groin strain, and now a re-aggravated groin injury. This is a player who never missed a game at Iowa, who was the definition of Iron Woman durability in college. But under WNBA care, she's become injury-prone and fragile.
And this year, it has been quad injury, and then another quad injury, and then a groin injury, and now what seems to be another groin injury. Now,
the timing couldn't be more catastrophic. All-Star Weekend was supposed to be Clark's coronation moment, her chance to showcase her skills on the biggest stage in her adopted home state. Instead, it became a monument to organizational failure. Every billboard in Indianapolis featured her face. Every store window displayed her jersey. The entire weekend was built around her presence. And now, she was reduced to watching from the sidelines because the league couldn't keep her healthy. NBA insiders reveal that Adam Silver's patience with WNBA leadership has evaporated entirely. The NBA commissioner, who has invested hundreds of millions in propping up the Women's League, is privately furious about what he sees as criminal mismanagement of the WNBA's most important asset.
I'll leave the specific question about the foul to my colleague, Commissioner Engelbert. I mean, other than as a fan, obviously, it's nothing new in basketball that there's sort of welcome to the league moments, especially for heralded rookies. But of course, I want to see Caitlyn treated fairly.
Silver's public comments about wanting Clark treated fairly and appropriately weren't diplomatic pleasantries. They were carefully worded warnings from someone who holds the WNBA's financial lifeline. When the commissioner of your funding partner goes on record expressing concern about player treatment, that's not feedback, that's a final notice. The frustration at NBA headquarters runs deeper than just Clark's injuries. Silver and his executive team have watched in horror as the WNBA has fumbled the greatest gift any professional sports league has ever received. A generational superstar who brought mainstream attention, broke viewership records, and fundamentally altered the league's revenue potential. And what has WNBA leadership done with this miracle? Allowed her to be systematically brutalized by incompetent officiating.
Think if this was Steph Curry in the NBA, do you really think that the NBA would be allowing certain players in the NBA to go after LeBron the way that Caitlyn was chucked to the ground? Do you think if another player came up, blindsided LeBron, chucked him to the ground after he had just been poked in the eye, that the NBA would be like, oh yeah, technicals, nobody's ejected.
Sources describe Silver as livid behind closed doors, questioning whether current WNBA leadership has any understanding of what they're risking. The NBA has subsidized the WNBA for decades, waiting for a breakthrough moment that would justify the investment. Clark represented that breakthrough, and watching her get injured repeatedly due to preventable causes has Silver seriously questioning the current management structure. The statistical evidence of what the WNBA is throwing away is staggering beyond comprehension. Clark's impact on league viewership hasn't just been significant, it's been revolutionary. Games featuring the Indiana Fever have consistently drawn audiences that dwarf anything the WNBA has ever seen. Her presence alone has driven ESPN's WNBA ratings up by an astronomical 170%, from 454,000 to over 1.2 million average viewers. That's not gradual growth, that's a complete transformation of the league's media value. Ion Television saw similar gains, with a 133% increase in viewership compared to the previous year. When Clark went down with her initial injury, the financial devastation was immediate and brutal. Fever games that had been averaging over 1.8 million viewers plummeted to just 847,000, a collapse of more than 50%.
But the news was just announced that WNBA TV ratings are down more than 50% since Caitlyn Clark's injury. And it was also reported that the Indiana Fever television viewership is also down over 53%.
That represents millions of dollars in lost advertising revenue, merchandising opportunities, and future broadcast deal negotiations. The betting market told an even more alarming story. Sports betting activity on Fever games dropped nearly 50% the moment Clark was sidelined. In today's sports landscape, betting handle is often the most honest indicator of genuine fan engagement. When half your action disappears because one player is injured, you're not dealing with a regular star. You're dealing with the foundation of your entire business model. The root cause of this catastrophe lies in the WNBA's complete failure to maintain professional officiating standards. The officiating crisis isn't just about occasional missed calls. It's about the total collapse of game control and player protection.
The WNBA refs have been diabolically awful this season, and one of the calls that they have just not been making is when a defender gets under a three-point shooter and doesn't give them space to land.
Respected basketball analysts have been forced to provide real-time officiating tutorials during broadcasts because the actual referees are so incompetent. When former players are explaining basic foul calls that officials are missing, you don't have a minor problem. You have institutional failure. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White has been forced to become a public critic of her own league, repeatedly calling out egregious officiating mistakes and the unbelievable disrespect being shown to her team.
I thought she got fouled. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games.
Her most damning revelation came after a particularly brutal game when she exposed the truth. Officials have been discussing these problems in league meetings for years, yet nothing has changed. The moment that crystallized everything wrong with WNBA officiating came during a crucial game when Marina Mabrey deliberately shoved Caitlyn Clark to the floor after a dead ball. It was textbook unsportsmanlike conduct with clear intent to injure the league's biggest star.
Starting with JC Sheldon hitting Caitlyn Clark in the face, and then there was a little spat between the two of them, and then Marina Mabrey comes out of nowhere, shoves Caitlyn Clark to the ground, and then later on in the game, there is the Sophie Cunningham hard foul on JC.
The initial response from officials was pathetic. They called a technical foul for what should have been an automatic ejection and suspension-worthy offense. Only after massive public outcry and social media backlash did the league scramble to upgrade the call to a flagrant 2.
If Marina Mabrey's foul during the game was called a flagrant 2, like it was upgraded to, then she would have been ejected during the game.
They didn't get it right in the moment when it mattered. They only fixed their mistake after being publicly embarrassed. Even Clark's family members were forced to speak out, with her brother expressing frustration about officials consistently failing to protect his sister from deliberate targeting.
That's it. That's all I gotta say. Fix your repping WNBA. It's bad though. Call down the WNBA referee.
When family members are making public pleas for basic player safety, the situation has moved far beyond normal sports complaints into genuine fear for someone's career and long-term health. The person ultimately responsible for this disaster is WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, whose failures have become impossible to ignore or excuse. Veteran sports journalists who have covered women's basketball for decades have publicly criticized Engelbert's inability to even discuss Caitlyn Clark coherently.
I think there was some racial elements there. I think there were even elements of, the alphabet mafia having a problem with Caitlyn Clark. She's white and straight.
When reporters ask specific questions about Clark, Engelbert consistently deflects to talking about other players, even when they weren't part of the original question. This isn't just poor media relations, it's a fundamental failure to understand leadership responsibility. When your league's most important player is under constant physical threat, you address it directly and make clear that targeting stars will have severe consequences. The business consequences of this mismanagement are staggering and accelerating. The WNBA was projected to achieve unprecedented revenue growth this year, primarily driven by Clark's massive audience expansion. Her college games consistently drew over 12 million viewers, with her Final Four appearance becoming ESPN's most-watched basketball game ever, men's or women's included. The league was positioned to capitalize on this momentum and establish sustainable financial success for the first time in its history. Instead, poor player protection has put all of that potential revenue at risk. Every game Clark misses represents lost viewership, decreased merchandise sales, and diminished future broadcast negotiations. The All-Star Game itself became a perfect metaphor for the Engelbert era: massive expectations, extensive promotion, and ultimate disappointment. Ticket prices collapsed by nearly 50% after Clark's withdrawal announcement. Fans who had traveled across the country found themselves holding tickets to a significantly devalued event. This disaster extends far beyond one player's injury situation. The WNBA's officiating problems have created a league-wide crisis affecting multiple stars. Players like Kelsey Plum have been forced to voice public frustration about constant no-calls and inconsistent application of rules. Adam Silver's carefully worded public statements about Clark's treatment represent something much more significant than diplomatic concern. They're a final warning from someone who controls the WNBA's financial future. The NBA has subsidized women's professional basketball for decades, and Silver finally saw the breakthrough that could justify that investment. Clark represented the WNBA's transition from charity case to legitimate business enterprise. Her ability to draw massive audiences and generate genuine mainstream interest was the miracle the league had been waiting for since its inception. Watching that opportunity get squandered due to preventable injuries has Silver questioning whether current leadership deserves to continue. The stakes couldn't be higher. With CBA negotiations approaching and potential lockout scenarios looming, having your most valuable player sidelined during the league's biggest showcase weekend sends a terrible message about organizational competence. This All-Star weekend will be remembered as the moment the WNBA was forced to confront its fundamental leadership crisis. Clark's absence from her home state celebration represents more than just one player missing one game. It's a symbol of institutional failure at the highest levels. The league had been handed the golden ticket, a transcendent superstar who could elevate women's basketball to unprecedented heights. Instead of protecting that gift, they've allowed it to be systematically damaged by preventable circumstances. Adam Silver's patience has run out. His warnings about treating Clark appropriately weren't suggestions. They were ultimatums. Fix the officiating crisis, protect your stars, and demonstrate competent leadership, or prepare to face consequences from the organization that keeps your league financially viable. The question now isn't whether changes are needed, it's whether current WNBA leadership has the competence and courage to make them before it's too late. Share your thoughts in the comments below.